Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Empowered Pause. I am your host, Rachel Chenoa J. Welcome to Wednesday, July 26th. Again, time is moving so fast. We are at the end of another month and embarking on the second half of the summer. People are getting ready to go back to school, finishing up vacations. I hope everyone out there is doing really well. Of course, before we get started on today's topic, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the Empowered Pause and Speak Initiative, who the Empowered Pause is actually brought to you by. Speak Initiative is a nonprofit organization, and Speak stands for Suicide Prevention Through Empowerment, Action, and Kindness. We are a peer support organization that stands in the gap with people who are experiencing mental health challenges or who have had past suicidal ideations. Our mission is to reduce the stigma around suicide and mental health care in the Black community by allowing our partners to speak, be heard, and live fully. The Empowered Pause was actually launched in 2022, last June, and we launched it to basically hold virtual weekly space for anyone who may be in need of a brief midweek pause. Here, we actually connect, stop, recharge with encouragement, empowerment, grace, and gratitude. Each week, our goal is to share information and experiences or ideas around journeying through this life empowered and equipped to live healthy and fully. Right? So that's a little bit about the Empowered Pause. Each week we are here, again, just sharing information or experiences and ideas to just feel better, ways that we can actually feel better or do better for ourselves, ways we can show up in a better space. So today I want to talk a little bit about finding peace in the chaos. Right? So a bit of transparency about me. I like to think of myself as a pretty mellow person. Because of my mental health diagnosis and some challenges that come with it, I work really hard at being calmer than my brain triggers at times. Um, I have to remind myself to breathe through moments and to use my resources when things get a little too heavy. These things and a few other ways are things that I've learned how to do to find peace in my day to day. But as we know, like I said the last time we were live, life is always lifing. It's going to go the way it's going to go. And sometimes things don't always go according to plan. So the question I have is, what happens when you have to be a little unpeaceful to maintain or regain your sense of peace, right? As we know, life comes with all sorts of twists and turns, ups and downs. One day all can be perceived as going well, even smooth. And things could be on track, lined up. You could be leaning into the good. And then out of nowhere, there's a car accident. You may lose your job, or you may even lose a loved one or a friend. And that doesn't actually have to mean death. Most of us understand that relationships can evolve, they grow, and sometimes they end. But this is all change, right? And change, sometimes it feels good, sometimes it does not. It can be chaotic. When the unexpected happens, it may feel like no one, like your sense of peace is under attack, your sense of self. For me, it feels like an intrusion on my comfortable boundaries, as my being is actually under attack sometimes. I prefer to be calm, stable, able to think clearly, because I know myself well enough to know that the intensity of the opposite isn't just a moment for me. It can turn into a full body mind experience, and that can sometimes derail me a little bit. So we have to fight for our peace sometimes, and in the chaos, there are things that we can actually do to maintain or regain our peace. So I recently read an article that I'd like to share with you entitled How to Find Inner Peace and Happiness in the Chaos. It was published last year. I will share the link in the comments after this live. Um, but let's just get into it. So it starts. Inner peace is possible, and you don't need to meditate on a mountaintop or break the bank for a wellness retreat in order to find it. Carving out time to relax is wonderful, but it's amid the frantic pace of everyday life when we need serenity the most. That moment when you're stuck in the pharmacy line and the contents of your bag spills, or your phone starts ringing, right? That's when you need to find inner peace within yourself, right as you're suppressing the urge to unleash a stream of four-letter words. Um, there's a psychotherapist who wrote a book called The Little Book of Inner Peace: Simple Practices for Less Angst and More Calm. She said that often people look for circumstances to help achieve a sense of inner peace. However, the calm, compassionate, deep awareness is actually within each person. It's as if we have a deep reservoir of peacefulness and serenity inside of us. What we have to learn to do is to tap into it. We can do this by a series of micro practices, and you can get better at accessing your own inner calm, even if it's been hiding for a while. So we're going to go over about a few of those micro practices that the author offers and just see how they sit with you. I know they sit very well in my spirit because some of them I actually do, not because of the article, but because they naturally came to me. But I believe it's always helpful to remind us of the things that we can do and be mindful that we're actually doing them in the moment, right? So we go on to say peace of mind doesn't require peace and quiet. Have you ever been scuba diving or even just watched a good deep sea documentary? The ocean's tide brings the drama when it crashes against the shore. But venture a few meters down and you'll find a tranquil world of creatures moving at their own pace, wholly unfazed by the action up above. The problem is most of us live sort of on the surface of the waves, where there's a lot of turbulence and wildness. But again, this deep, calm awareness is actually within each person. The author maintains that you don't need to shut out the noise to find inner peace. There's an assumption that if you're in a quiet place, it will be more conducive to accessing the spot within. But in fact, there are people who have panic attacks while they're on a massage table. You could be on a New York City subway surrounded by people and noise, and close your eyes and go into the space where your calmness resides, right? We all have the ability to do this. These are things that are, they don't cost money. They're uh, not difficult to do, and they actually can make you feel better and more grounded. So I know we've heard this one before, but of course, in this sense, I'm going to say it again. Breathe in and breathe out. That's number one. Breathe in and breathe out. Your breath is always with you. And both yoga and meditation practices harness the power of breath control to help shift your state of mind. The author who wrote the book, the psychotherapist, her last name is Davis, she likes to recommend practicing the 4-7-8 breath, which is based on a time tested yoga technique because you can do it anywhere at any time. So the 4-7-8 technique is you close your mouth and inhale through your nose as you count to 4. You hold that breath as you count to 7, and then you exhale through your mouth as you count to 8. 4-7-8. The long exhale helps stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically initiating a relaxation response in your body. Make sure to breathe really low to fill your belly with air. Okay. Number 2 was feel the truth that you are safe and loved. Remind yourself that you are breathing and hopefully you're physically protected, right? Think about the people you care about and the people who care about you. Suggest, I mean, it's going to suggest saying that focusing on a lower, it can lower your panic response. When you focus on people that care about you, the people who you care about, it tends to calm you down, because the author says, let the truth of that warm your heart. Let the truth of the love that you receive warm you. Let the truth of the fact that you're safe protect you. Let that calm you down in that moment. Number 3 is visualize your happy place. This is another micro practice that becomes easier the more you do it. And the stronger your visualization, the more effective it is. It's okay if it takes you a while to conjure up what that go-to happy place is, but you might want to picture places like the ocean, maybe your bedroom under the covers, a lake, playing with your pet, being with someone you love, or maybe your favorite vacation. You can try to get all of the details into your mind's eye, the smells, the sounds, the textures, the touch. Accessing these vivid memories will cue your body to start feeling like you're actually there, which will actually relax you. Next, read the story you're telling yourself. If you find yourself spiraling over perceived disappointment, frustration, or panic inducing thought, try stepping back to assess whether your brain is telling you the truth. Examine the source of your turmoil. Um, when you examine the source of your turmoil, it can make it feel smaller in size. So the author actually tells her students that what you resist persists, and what they need to feel it to heal it, right? There's a technique called RAIN, and it was coined by a meditation teacher, Michelle McDonald. And RAIN is basically a 4-step process, or a 4-step technique to um, to go through the story that you're actually telling yourself, right? So the first step in RAIN, of course, R, is to recognize what's happening. Label the emotion, because simply naming it calms down your over arousal, right? Allow your situation, this is the A, allow your situation to be there. You're not resisting it or trying to numb it and run away from it. You're allowing it to be there long enough to work with it. The I stands for investigate. Ask yourself, what most wants my attention? What am I believing? Where am I experiencing these feelings in my body? Can I put my hands on where I'm feeling it and soften the area? All of this inquiry is done with love and not judgment. Lastly, N for nourish. This is alternately defined as natural loving awareness. You've observed yourself, and it's time to treat yourself with loving kindness. Ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now? Just talking to yourself like you would a dear friend is extremely helpful and healing. It staves off the feelings of isolation. There's another technique as you're going through assessing the story that you're telling yourself, going through what those thoughts are actually saying, and it's called ACT. Because there's no one road to self-compassion, right? And ACT was developed based on the work of Kristen Neff, who is a prominent researcher in the field of self-compassion. So A is for acknowledge, as in you acknowledge your suffering or your struggle. You can say, this really sucks. I don't like what's going on right now. C is for connect, and connecting to all common humanity to remember that you're not alone in this. And of course, you can say, other people get hurt too, other people get frustrated, other people feel angry or impatient, just as I'm feeling at the moment, right? And the T is simply to talk kindly to yourself. And I've talked about this before. Positive self-talk is recommended to address yourself as you would a friend, because using I sentences may make you feel more isolated, right? So research shows that when you talk to yourself in the third person, you actually activate the care circuit in your brain so that you feel more cared for. You're accessing your higher self so that you can talk yourself off the ledge and you feel more supported. So I would say, Rachel, you're going to be okay. It's a really hard moment, but don't forget that you're not alone in this. Next, make a joy list for when you need it later. While a compassionate inventory of how you're feeling is a powerful mindfulness exercise, asking yourself, what do I need to do right now, can remind you to lean on actions that tend to give you peace. Since many people find it challenging to remember which activities bring them joy when they're feeling weighted in chaos, a psychologist recommends looking into a joy list that you've compiled ahead of time. Free associate what brings you joy, and then pick something on a list to do when you're feeling lousy. While you're doing that thing, such as flower arranging or baking, savor it. It could be looking at the sunrise. Take it in for a few minutes because taking in the good rewires your brain for happiness and resilience. If you look at a beautiful sunset and say, that is a beautiful sunset, what's for dinner? You haven't given your brain a chance to truly form a positive connection. Instead, try to fully give yourself over to the moment, noticing the rich colors of the sky, because that's productive work in its own way. Just letting you fill up for that moment of awe is enough to rewire your brain for happiness and resilience. You can do this multiple times a day. Also, building up a joy reserve just by savoring those first sips of morning coffee or tea or the sound of a child giggling, right? Write those things down so you can go back to them and remember them, embrace them in those moments. Next is cultivate gratitude for what's happening and what's not happening. The psychological benefits of gratitude have been championed repeatedly in the fields of happiness research. And according to the author of the book, practicing gratitude is another way to quickly access that state of inner peace. She suggests that two simple ways to get into the habit is to keep a gratitude journal and by smiling as soon as you sit up in the bed in the morning. When you smile, it signals your brain that things are good and that you're happy. If you find yourself struggling to think of what you're grateful for in the heat of a chaotic or frustrating moment, it's suggested that you start by naming what you're glad isn't happening. And I find actually that that's a little easier for me to do because you can think about the things that you don't want sometimes easier than I can put my finger on the things that I do want. So if you start naming what you're glad that isn't happening, now you got something that you're actually thankful for, right? So go back to, if you went back to the earlier subway example, in the crowded commute, you would think, I'm glad I'm not being mugged right now. That's a New York thing. Um, I'm glad it's actually moving and we're not stuck in the dark, right? Because that happens often, especially in the summer in New York. And I'm glad it's air conditioned. I'm glad I have a seat. I'm glad I have a physically healthy body. Like one small positive spark, a positive thought can spark another, right? Next, they suggest that you ask yourself two questions daily. Your gratitude journal entries don't need to be lengthy reflections, like some burdensome daily homework assignment. Don't make it a chore. Instead, you can use these two simple prompts to list an item or two for each day. What did I enjoy today? And what am I grateful for today? Maybe you did something that's on your joy list, for example. You can put that on your gratitude journal. Next is to serve others to help yourself too. Everyone knows that when you help other people, you feel better. Those in the field of positive psychology believe that the good feelings that come from truly meaningful acts cultivate something they deem eudaimonic well-being. Over decades of research has suggested that in the long term, the eudaimonic happiness that people feel from doing something like volunteering or making someone feel good is more rewarding and longer lasting than the more commonly pursued hedonic, excuse me, hedonic, hedonic, we'll figure that out later, well-being, which prioritizes seeking pleasure and minimizing pain, thus building up a reserve of eudaimonic happiness through acts of service could potentially up your general inner peace baseline. We got two more to go, but I think these are really good. And again, they're not hard to do, but sometimes we forget that we have this reservoir or these abilities within ourselves. So I just like to remind you. The number 9 is maintain good self care and hygiene, eating right, getting plenty of sleep, exercising, meditating, and practicing mindfulness daily can all shore up your mental peace defenses for when hell breaks loose in your world or in your head. Even while you're just brushing your teeth, you can focus on feeling the toothbrush, tasting the toothpaste, or even hearing the sounds so you're not worrying about your to-do list or what just happened in the news. That's a mindfulness and daily life activity, right? It's all about developing the pause so that when you feel yourself reacting to a situation, you're better prepared to respond in a calmer way. And last but definitely not least is practice acceptance. In the larger pursuit of learning to access your inner peace, Davis says that accepting the existence of things that are out of your control is the long-term goal, as difficult as it may be. Acceptance is an overall way of engaging with life. So it's less about a quick practice and more about a life orientation. When we resist our circumstances, we create a lot of suffering, which of course is the opposite of inner peace. The second you start going with the flow and putting yourself in alignment with what is, you immediately start to have a sense of flowing with rather than flowing against. It's a challenging process and one your brain may resist on impulse at first. That's why it's called practice. You may not nail it the first time, the 15th time, or even the 50th time, and that's normal. It's okay. In terms of practice, I might say to someone, right, when you're in a situation like you're in a long grocery line, you can't believe it, you're late for something, you're feeling really stressed, let's stop, drop your heart rate, and say, this is what I've got. This is where I am. I'm just going to go with the flow of this. I'm going to look for an opportunity now to just practice patience and practice self-compassion. You could say, this is really hard. I wish it could be faster. I wish I wasn't in this line, but I am. It's okay. And I'm okay. So those are 10 things that were highlighted in their book, Finding Inner Peace and Happiness in the Chaos. So I again wanted to share this article in a few ways to maintain or regain your inner peace in the chaos. And I hope these few minutes have been helpful to you. I know this is a longer pause than usual, but I really wanted to get this information and share it out. So as always, please react, comment, share this episode of the Empowered Pause. Visit our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, or rewatch this episode or any of our earlier episodes right here on Facebook. And as a reminder, we're walking weekly as the weather and the air quality permits, depending on the weather and how many people register through Speakers with Sneakers. We'll be walking every week until August 26th, every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. right here in the Bronx. Also, if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Empowered Pause, we are looking for people who could be speakers or listeners. You could be someone who has had a mental health challenge, or you could be someone who supports someone with a mental health challenge. Either way, we are looking for interviewees, and we hope that you'll be interested in working with us and journeying with us. So again, thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.